Welcome to Future of Work 2.0. I'm your co-host, Idris Manley.
And I'm Ross Martin. One of the questions that we get a lot from our viewers is, how is AI going to impact my career? And so we've got a treat for you today. That is the topic. The topic is, how is artificial intelligence going to impact the role and responsibilities of project managers? So Idris, what's the big thing here? How is AI going to impact project management professionals?
The project management career is going to go away, cease to exist as we know it.
Oh my God, the world is falling.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
No, it's not. It's not.
No.
But it will change.
It will change. There is a place for us. But yeah, it definitely will change. I think, certainly it definitely is the most, if not one of the most common questions I get regularly over email and speaking to people, is the anxiety and fear that they have around how AI is going to impact their career. And there are a lot of people that are really stressed about this concept. So I think it's really good that we're taking some time to really to discuss it and to really share our thoughts on where the industry is headed.
So is it something to be fearful of, or is it an opportunity?
Both.
Okay.
I think it's something to definitely have a healthy respect for.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You should have a healthy respect for the impact that AI will have on your career, but it isn't something to fear, because I think it's important to view AI or AI in the context of project management as really an assistant, as a trusted assistant, right? There's someone who will be able to help you by doing some of the more mundane tasks, and those tasks would be whether it's planning or scheduling a project plan, or taking meeting notes,
exactly,
or scheduling meetings. It will, even doing some level of like risk management and some of these other things as well. But it really will be able to do a lot of these more sort of repetitive tasks that are consuming 80% or more of your time a week. It'll be able to do those things pretty effortlessly. And so it will provide project managers an opportunity to begin to focus on other types of activities that perhaps either they didn't have the time to focus on, or weren't necessarily in their mind maybe the highest priority when they were focused on tasks and getting deliverables done. It'll really give them a chance to focus on those higher order sort of activities.
And often those types of activities are handled as an entry-level position called a project coordinator, at least in some companies, right?
Sure.
And so I think that particular role is going to get automated mostly. And all the project management 101, the basic stuff you learn, and that some people who don't understand, the value that project and program management can provide to a company, think that, or have only encountered people who take meeting notes and schedule meetings and organize and create project plans and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's gonna get automated by AI. But like you said, it's gonna create a capacity situation for project managers as those things get handled by your new AI assistant.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good thing. I think, just to touch on an earlier point you made, I think we both have been in the industry for longer than I would like to say, but certainly I've been in the industry for more than 25 years. And same with you. And one of the things that we can say as PMO leaders is that the executives have oftentimes viewed PMO and project managers as really a more of a marginalized sort of function that they can they can replace or minimize, and so I think that with AI, it really provides project managers an opportunity with that extra capacity to begin adding much more strategic value in ways that we haven't historically, which will allow executives to begin viewing project management in an entirely new light. If we get this right, you can really begin to provide insights and information in a way that is highly valuable and useful to the business goals of the company and to the strategic discussions that they're having or considerations that they need to have in order to make sure they're making the right strategic decisions that will ultimately impact the business.
Well, and that makes me think about what we've learned as we moved through our careers as project managers, and then in the director and senior director levels, and then eventually up into VP, head of PMO, those types of levels. is that's the kind of thing that we had to do to move our careers forward. You have to have the leaders of the company have to start seeing you as thinking strategically and providing more value than the basic project management, chasing down tasks and deliverables, that sort of thing.
And project managers, they really struggle in that area. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I have an action item to really quantify the ratio of senior level project management positions, like say senior director, VP, head of PMO, relative to to all of the other project management positions, senior manager, senior project manager, project manager level 1, 2, 3, et cetera. And compare that to engineering, marketing, product management to understand the ratios. My thesis is that the ratio between executive level project management positions or senior leader project management positions to other project management positions is much less than in other functions. Meaning, there are far more VP of engineering or VP of product management positions than there are, relative to the project management function. And I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is what you highlighted earlier, which is because we don't tend to be viewed as really strategic players. They don't necessarily see a need to have an executive level, senior level sort of role sort of defined for many companies.
I actually have an anecdote on that, which you made me think of. At a big tech Silicon Valley company that I worked at, one of my friends was a senior director of project management, and she was trying to get promoted to VP. And what her SVP did is he moved her into a product role so she could get promoted to VP because the company did not see VP of project management as a thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't even an option. And if she was ever going to move up in her career, she had to switch lanes.
Yeah. I can't tell you the number of project managers over the years that actually moved out of project management in order to continue moving up in their career because they felt that they had really hit a ceiling in project management. So they moved into operations, or they moved into product management, or they moved into other adjacent functional disciplines in order to continue growing in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting is we're talking a little bit about sort of the opportunities and what needs to happen to grow your career. Let's talk a little bit about if someone chooses not to go that route.
No,
Because some of that might be scary, especially if you've never felt like you really completely understand strategy or any of that stuff. And what you're really good at is you're really good at getting people to get their stuff done, to hit their deliverable dates. You're really good at organizing people and and taking meeting notes and all that kind of stuff. And what do those people have to fear?
Yeah, no, I think fear may be an appropriate word in this particular instance, right? I think that when we look at AI, we can look at it from an opportunistic sort of lens, where it presents a tremendous opportunity for PMs to up-level their careers and to really redefine their careers in entirely new ways as leaders and strategic thinkers in companies. But there is also the opposite end of that, which is it also will create competition for certain PMs based on what they value or what they have decided to specialize in terms of their value contribution. And so if your value contribution as a project manager is really on those sort of repetitive tasks that, we said the more mundane tasks that are relatively simple in the sort of the portfolio of activities that a project manager can perform, those are going to be the skills and the activities are going to be replaced initially by your AI assistant. And then the question becomes, okay, as a project manager, what are you left to do? If your assistant is actually planning your project, evaluating risks for you, actually taking meeting notes and sending meeting notes out and tracking and monitoring and controlling your project, what is left for you? And
I suppose a little bit of oversight, but
no oversight, no, absolutely.
that's maybe not worth a full-time role.
Not a full-time role, absolutely. And so perhaps as a company, they may decide to have half the number of project managers that are responsible for sort of project coordination. So that person is taking on more responsibility in terms of more projects because their AI assistant is able to do a good portion of the task that they have to perform. So in that instance, then the question becomes, who are they going to select? If a company is left to reduce, the project managers that they have on staff, who would they select versus not? And more than likely, the person that is able to offer more value, to offer more insight, more strategic capability, other than just providing oversight, they're probably going to be in better position to keep their jobs or to continue to excel.
Yeah, and I think of people like I'm thinking of another woman that I worked with at my previous company, where you can tell like she had the desire and the drive to move her career forward, but felt stuck. And I think one of the reasons she felt stuck is she was an IT program manager, and she couldn't get past the mundane, the volume of stuff she had to track what made it so it was very hard for her to be strategic, even though she wanted to be. So for people like that, I think this is nothing but opportunity.
Yeah.
Now you have the opportunity. She's going to have the ability to have her AI assistant take care of all that stuff, free her up to become more strategic and to provide more value and drive her career forward. And I think they're going to really love this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely a mindset sort of pivot. Over the course of my career, when I think about the various project managers I've managed, I would say that a good portion of them are sort of, as you described, where they really are opportunistic. They really want to be able to thrive and excel and really take on leadership sort of roles. But then there have been a fair share of project managers that they really find value in the mundane. They, for whatever reason,
it's comfortable.
It's a very comfortable space to take meeting notes and send out status reports is their thing, and they really get a lot of enjoyment and pleasure out of performing those kinds of activities. Now, for some of them, they just, again, because it's a mindset, they just maybe haven't had the opportunity to sort of challenge themselves in other areas or to really explore sort of other ways to add value. But for others, they're very content. And so I think for individuals that are particularly content with that being their value, their unique value proposition, I think those are going to be individuals that are going to have a bit more of a struggle. But again, having said that, you can still make the pivot. There's plenty of time to be able to still sort of evolve and to shift the mindset
Yes.
and to be able to begin seeing value and opportunity in some of these higher value sort of contribution and more strategic contributions that I think will be critical for your success.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, your boss and your company aren't yet making lists of who to keep when they cut their PMOs into half. But then I paused for just a second when I thought about some of the recent layoffs that just happened with some of our biggest names, tech names in Silicon Valley and up in Seattle. And some of what they're saying in this case, now this was not about project management, but in these cases it was about they wanted to shed some cost in order to reinvest in AI, but in this case, building their generative AI capabilities.
Yes, yeah.
What that says to me, though, is maybe it isn't yet time for companies to start deciding what to do with their PMOs because AI isn't quite ready to take all this project coordinator thing, all of the tasks away. But they're going to be thinking about these things in the context of AI with all their areas.
Absolutely.
Pretty soon. And when people are making decisions about cost cutting in any company, in any scenario, you always want to be the one who they say, oh, we can't live without that person.
Yeah, and the way that happens is by offering greater value than your peers. Right?
Exactly.
And the way that you do that is by being more strategic, thinking about business outcomes, understanding concepts around value delivery management, agility, et cetera.
Exactly. And then you become someone who is really helping drive your company towards being a delivery machine.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it is a different mindset, and so I
It
think
is.
it is important to really establish a clear vision for yourself, and for your career, to really start to reimagine what your career would look like with AI, and how you could perhaps add greater value than previous with the additional capacity. I think it's important to be able to then establish a strategy that aligns with that vision. So how are you going to strategically approach achieving that vision that you have in mind? And then establishing a plan, which I would expect every project manager to know how to do very,
I hope so.
very effectively. But then you establish a plan where you really start to lay out, okay, over what time frame, what are the key milestones, what am I trying to accomplish? There may be a need to learn new skill sets, play around with certain tools, but really put that into a project plan so you can really hold yourself accountable for how you're going to progress to achieving that strategy. And then ultimately think about how you measure it, how do you truly hold yourself accountable, how do you essentially ensure that you're going to be successful in your execution. So
Yeah, you could call it Project My Career in the face of AI.
absolutely.
In the context of project managers now having AI assistants taking care of the mundane tasks, we said, what are they going to do with all that capacity? And what they need to do is be more strategic. And so what exactly does it mean to be more strategic as a project manager? One of the areas is to focus on business outcomes instead of tasks and deliverables.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you're thinking about being more strategic, one of the first areas that comes to mind is being more business outcome focused. And so what does that mean? Well, I think it's important to maybe start by understanding the history of project management and why we have such a preoccupation with tasks and deliverables, right? And so if you look at the evolution of project management as a discipline, as a function, it really sort of originates from construction, engineering, aerospace, a lot of the
automotive
sciences,
in the beginning of the 1900s.
The industrial era, and there being just an innate focus on manufacturing, and so developing widgets, getting widgets out as efficiently as possible, and so so as a result of that, it was really critical to be very focused on the tasks and achieving the deliverables. And so I think as a result, as project management has evolved, there has been just an innate sort of focus for project managers on that, and at times to our detriment, because it has really limited our ability to be able to think about some of the more strategic aspects like business outcomes, right? And so I can't tell you the amount of projects that I've seen supported where project success was defined by completing the deliverable as opposed to the business outcome, right? And so being able to, defining a project based on simply completing the specific deliverables that were in scope, regardless of whether the project itself actually achieved the business outcomes that were specified in the charter or by the executive sponsor, and how the executive sponsor was ultimately measuring success.
I would even take that a little bit further, Idris, which is I've been in a number of situations where I don't think that the team themselves, including the project manager, even really knew what the business outcome was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, and I could even go a little further and say there's been a few situations where I'm not entirely sure the executive sponsor knew exactly what it was we were trying to do. So it's like you're now in charge of Project Moon, and your job is to deliver these things by this date, and that as what the project manager focused on. No one stepped back and said, what is the ultimate business outcome? What is the point? What is the goal trying to be achieved to drive the company forward in this way, to achieve a certain amount of revenue? What is the point? And it's lost a lot of times, either in translation or never really written down.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and you're right. To be fair, executives oftentimes aren't asking, at least they're not asking the project managers.
Yes.
Now, behind closed doors in boardrooms, I'm sure there are questions being asked. We made this $10 million investment. Where are we at with our ROI? Those questions are being asked, but they don't oftentimes get down to the project management level. for whatever reason. And so I think it's important that project managers understand that it's actually an opportunity for us. That is an opportunity to be able to begin to understand the business goals and outcomes and how your projects relate to them, and to be able to begin tracking and holding teams accountable, not just for completing the deliverables and the tasks that they are assigned, but really starting to track the KPIs and metrics associated with the business outcomes. And sometimes it requires you to organize your project plans in new ways, where instead of just organizing your project plan based on the specific deliverables that need to be performed, really starting to think about the outputs, or what are the KPIs or the business implications of these deliverables. Can you, and this starts to get into agility as well, can you start to organize the development of those deliverables in a way where maybe you front load some of those deliverables early on, so you can begin to track some of the output metrics that they are responsible for. So by the time you complete the project, you have a bit of history in some of those KPIs that you can then use to be able to evaluate if the project is actually delivering to the business outcome. So it definitely requires a new way of thinking about project plans. How it also requires, in your initiation sort of stage, really beginning to understand what those business outcomes are and making sure that they're explicit, and also making that a part of your communications and your governance and the accountability, within the team. So it becomes really part of the structure of how you're planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling your projects.
Yeah, I think, as we've moved through our careers, one of the things that's helped us as we moved into the director and then eventually into the VP roles that we had is starting to really focus instead on things like business outcomes instead of just tasks and deliverables. I think one of the reasons that project managers and project teams don't often know what the ultimate business outcomes that they're going for are is if the senior leaders don't think that they think that way. Right. So if the person thinks of themselves, if you as a project manager think of yourself as a taskmaster who gets things done and makes sure that they happen and follows up very well, your executive sponsor may not see the need to go into what's the business strategy around why we're trying to implement SAP in Europe or something like that, because that's just not, they can see that's not the way you think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I mentioned that, I think, in the earlier segment that, with having worked in as a PMO for over 25 years, I probably know hundreds of project managers. I've worked with hundreds of project managers over my career, and I can tell you I probably have only encountered less than 10, less than I can count on both my hands the number of VPs or heads of project manager that I've encountered in that role. And I think that is because as project managers, we don't tend to think that way. We don't really tend to think about the business value of what we're working on. We don't tend to emphasize that, and we get very comfortable just focusing on the deliverables. And so I think as a project manager, if you're looking to really take advantage of AI in ways that will benefit your career, and not just allow you to sort of sustain, but actually create new opportunities that can translate into compensation, to titling, and more responsibility. I think it's important to understand how your projects relate to the business goals and specifically business outcomes that they're producing, and really take the same level of accountability and responsibility that you place on the deliverables and the tasks, making sure that they're completed on time and scope and with quality, using that same mindset to apply to the business outcomes and holding the teams accountable for what may be necessary to successfully achieve those business outcomes.
In waterfall programs, the way that it works usually is at the end, when you're done, there's a desire to have a certain amount of measurement around whether you achieved what it is that you were trying to achieve. Obviously, if the business outcomes that led to doing the project in the first place are lost along the way, then the team can just celebrate whether they hit their date. But even if they do know about the outcome that they're going for, what I've found is, first of all, if you're now measuring at the end after it's over, it's a hindsight thing,
too
right?
late. Yeah.
We were going for that and we didn't hit it. Oh. And then somebody maybe writes a lessons learned document so that, for the future people. And then the question is, does anyone actually look at that? So I think, and we'll touch on this when we talk a little bit more about Agile, but the idea is to make sure as a strategic project manager in the future, when you have your AI assistant taking care of the mundane, one of the things that you can then be doing is make sure all along the way, the business outcome or outcomes that you are trying to achieve for doing this program or project or initiative in the first place, why you are doing it, is a touchstone all along the way through every step through every phase, through the initiation, through the planning, through the execution, measure and adapt. Even in the close, you're constantly thinking about, did we achieve the why, and what course corrections do we need to do along the way to get there if you're not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely have to ask the why. I would take it a step further, and I would encourage, if I were a project manager right now, individual contributor, and I was trying to take advantage of AI and business outcomes, I would actually encourage business leaders to allow me as a project manager to take responsibility for the project, not just at the completion of the deliverable. I would insist that I would like to take some level of accountability for post the deliverables being complete to actually, which now you're moving into operations. Mm-hmm. And now you're saying, hey, I would like to have some level of oversight into this project, even at post completion from a deliverable perspective, and to monitor and control and to help support the achievement of the business metrics that are needed, even as it moves into from the change management to the operational sort of ongoing sort of steady state of whatever that will just produce.
I've never seen that in practice. I totally agree with you that it's a great idea. But what I always see happens is at the end of the project manager is immediately put on something else. No. And the operations person in charge of that part of the business is told, this project went in, you now have this new warehousing software,
this new widget, yeah.
and it's supposed to drive your efficiency up by X percent. Go measure it, and that's sort of lost to the project manager.
Absolutely. No, I mean, in my last role as a VP of PMO for a technology company, I actually insisted that my team start to take on that responsibility. Why? Because they were responsible for initiating the project and managing the project. They had more context, insight, and understanding of what was needed to be successful, and that was of use to on the operational side, the operational leader, to be able to take advantage and have another set of eyes that already understood, sort of the background and the history of the project that was being put together, to really allow them to support them and really help drive and be accountable, or at least not accountable, but at least be aware and have some level of responsibility to help ensure that they're actually achieving the KPI. Like, what senior leader wouldn't appreciate that extra help and that extra insight that could help them, successfully deliver on those business outcomes?
Well, and I like that idea, Idris, as well. Where, like, say, for example, we're talking about an operations situation, an operations initiative that this project manager is working on, is having them spend some time being a bit embedded in certain parts of the business. I think project managers are good at being jacks of all trade in some ways, but sometimes when they are, like I said, they're specifically working side by side with an executive in sales or marketing or operations or some sort of frontline customer-focused part of the business, then that helps them become better at understanding what a strategic outcome is. Yeah. Because if you are in operations with the person that you worked on that thing with, trying to figure out how to measure the performance of what you implemented in driving their efficiency, and you're sitting side by side with them, then then the whole point of why you even did it in the first place really starts to sink in.
You have a better appreciation for the value
Exactly.
and the why.
The why.
You have a better appreciation
Why?
for the why. Why are we doing this, and really understanding it more deeply. And I think, it's interesting because I don't think a lot of project managers or PMOs are going to have senior executives coming to them and knocking on their door and saying, hey, we would like you to be accountable or to start to drive business outcomes. Why? Because culturally, it's just something that hasn't happened before. And so I think it's going to require, to a certain extent, project managers to become more visionary and to really sort of help sort of define the precedent, help business leaders really reimagine and understand your role in new ways. But it's going to really require you to have that vision and you to really encourage sort of this sort of new approach that's to be taken. So you're going to have to insist and make recommendations and request those additional responsibilities. And you're going to have to it's going to be a little bit of give and take where you're going to have to demonstrate that you have the capability and the competency to be able to manage things at that level, and over time they will see the value, they will recognize the value, and you'll see that they will start to embrace that. But it may, initially it may take some prompting and some pushing to be given the opportunity to make that difference. But I assure you that if you're able to do it successfully, the value will be recognized, it will be appreciated, and you will likely be compensated and given all the accolades that comes with being a more impactful player, that's more closely aligned to business goal value versus just deliverable and task value.
Yeah, you made me think of a situation where one of the ways that project managers can be marginalized. I'm thinking of a situation where the finance function at one of my companies, they were going to be implementing a new accounts receivable platform, and they asked for the PMO to provide a project manager to help create a project plan, schedule meetings, take notes, follow up on action items. And the head of the accounts receivable function was the executive sponsor and owner of the whole project, and really was just looking for an AI coordinator, which could in the future would be an AI assistant, right? Because he, in this case, didn't really have very many. He's an operator, so he didn't have and a finance guy, so he personally didn't have a lot of project management skills. But this is a situation, I think, according like what you're saying, is where it would be important as the PMO to insist that the role be defined as more than that.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, we'll help you, and we need this person to actually be side by side with, understanding the business outcome that is being sought here, and really understanding and helping put together the business case and the strategy around this. So your project manager then is also thinking about, is this even the right thing to do? Or is the package that you selected, or has it been selected? Should it have been selected? What was the method for that?
Versus just
yes,
rolling up
okay.
the sleeves and delivering and,
Yeah.
and without asking.
Whatever this person says to do sounds good to me. I have no reason to question it. I'm not a finance expert, right? And so really thinking about these higher order effects, that's the kind of thing AI can't do.
Right. No, it's interesting. Whenever I join a new team or department or even company, one of the things I'm usually pretty clear on, both within my team and the sponsors that my team supports, is that we are not note takers.
Yes.
Yeah? I'm usually very clear and emphatic about our value add is not right. Scheduling meetings and writing notes. If that is what you're looking for, we're not it. I think that everyone on the project team is capable of scheduling meetings when necessary. Everyone is capable of picking up a pen and writing notes. I'm not saying that there isn't value. There isn't a role for us to play in those areas, certainly. But I'm trying to make really a larger point, which is we have to make sure that we're not being boxed in as project managers and just and marginalized as just project coordinators, or at least those basic activities, because then you're going to find yourself limited from the onset. And so it's really important early on to frame properly, to your point, what we're capable of doing, what we see as valuable, so that the sponsors and other senior leaders really begin to internalize and see us as, in those ways. But that won't happen if we're quick to pick up a pen and be the first to take notes and schedule the next meeting and not allow other team members to take on some of that muscle memory and some of that.
Well, and that's interesting, because you think about it. Early in our career as a project manager in the manager level, right? Like this helpfulness, this I'm willing to work. What do you need? This eagerness? You're right. Like, you got a shovel? You got some paint rollers? I'm sure I'll do it.
Yeah. No, and I think when you're early in your career, you think that your role is to just add value wherever there's a need. I will add value, and I just want to, whatever you need. And I think as you start to mature in your career, you realize that all value isn't created equal, and so you don't necessarily want to be quick to add value in the areas that really aren't high impacting to the business. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we have finite capacity, and so we have to pick and choose. And so it is preferred to use your finite capacity in the areas that will deliver the greatest amount of impact to your stakeholders and to the business and to the company.
Well, and one of the things, speaking for myself personally, I remember distinctly at a Silicon Valley company that I worked at, being in a situation, I was a senior manager, and I wanted to be promoted into director, and I was finding that to be, a hard leap to make. And I remember a couple of times, being in meetings where people are like, "Can you take notes and follow up on action items?" And I was like, "No, I don't take notes. Like, take your own notes." and I remember getting some looks and they made me feel uncomfortable. Yeah. I was thinking, "Am I doing the wrong thing here?" Yeah. And then strangely enough, within the next cycle, I got promoted to director, because I think what happened is my SVP at that point started to realize, he's starting to get it, which is he needs to think about the bigger picture of the success of the project and the outcomes that we're trying to get at, and is not worried about the tasks and the note taking and the action item follow-up. Instead, as a project manager, you start to think more about, are we on track? Are we achieving what we're trying to achieve? Are we doing why we're doing this? Are we getting towards the why? And that's what all of a sudden the career started going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, everyone on your project team, on your RACI, has a different sort of interest, right? And it's important for you, particularly as you begin to mature in your career, to understand that those varying interests, that you need to be mindful of those varying interests, rather. And so an individual that you're supporting in your team may really want you just to take notes and to be able to schedule that meeting, because it makes their life easier. While that VP or that SVP or C-level individual really wants you to be able to provide, great insights on risks and how you're tracking to specific goals, et cetera. And so it's really important that you're able to delineate between the different needs and interests that exist, and to make sure that you are always aligning yourself with the needs of the most senior individuals, at the company.
Yeah.
If you want to thrive and if you want to grow your career. Now, if you just want to sort of maintain, then perhaps keeping your project team happy and taking those meeting notes, that might serve you well. But if you're really looking to sort of rise above your current level and you want to move into more management or more senior sort of responsibilities, you definitely want to make sure you're doing the things that senior leaders are going to value and appreciate. So
exactly. I think at this point it's time to no longer be the one who orders lunch.
Yeah.
The other thing that made me think of, it's not a project management anecdote, but I remember a situation at a big tech company where a engineering team on their own worked really hard over 2 weekends to deliver some functionality that they thought would be useful to the product. And they were surprised that senior management was mad at them for doing that. And the reason was that wasn't what senior management would want them to have spent that time on. So that it wasn't and I saw this before as well when I was in big consulting, where people are like, but I'm working really hard. I put in a lot of hours. Yeah. And senior management is looking for people that, again, work smart and are working on what is most impactful to the company, what delivers the outcomes, the business outcomes that they're looking for, and not just the people that put in a lot of hours.
Yeah. And people say the same thing when they're trying to be promoted as well, right?
Yes.
People that is the common
I've been a
refrain.
manager for X years.
No,
right?
but I've worked really hard.
Oh, yes,
I
yes.
deserve to be promoted. I've worked. Look at what I've done. So and the response oftentimes is, well, it's not just working how much you work. It's really working in the right way, working on the right things, and so it's important to be able to make the distinction.
Yeah. And that strategic mindset is the way to go.
Mindset is definitely the answer.
In the context of a project manager having additional capacity, because you now have an AI-powered project assistant who takes care of all of your mundane tasks, in addition to being strategic, another area that you can focus on is value delivery management. And value delivery management is really more about how the work gets done at your company, as opposed to what you're doing. So, Idris, let's talk a little bit about value delivery management, and maybe start by explaining a little bit more about what it is and how it's different.
Sure. Yeah, no, it really is an emerging concept, right? You start talking about like value streams and how we begin to redefine work. So historically, project managers have been very focused on what needs to get done, right? We focus on the deliverables, the tasks. We're very, that's how we measure success.
Yeah.
And it's been very important. I spoke earlier in a different segment how that was important because, historically the industry has evolved from aerospace and manufacturing and a lot of these sort of more industrial air sort of industries that required that level of discipline. But we're finding that, just being able to deliver on tasks and deliverables just isn't enough anymore. And now we need to, as project managers, really understand, how we're delivering, how efficiently are we delivering? Are we delivering faster than the competition, that widget? Are the teams, what is the baseline for how we deliver? How can we improve how we deliver, year over year, month over month, et cetera. So it asks us to begin taking accountability for understanding how the team is delivering and how we can continue to drive, improvements in that and to really look at how we deliver in the context of value. Right. And so there are various value streams within a company. There are internal value streams like, operations and, and product manufacturing, product development manufacturing, and there are external, value streams, excels and different marketing capabilities and customer sort of facing sort of activities as well. And so really being able to understand all of these various value streams that exist and understand them in the context of projects that you are, defining and managing becomes particularly important.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you're freed up from worrying about, chasing down tasks and deliverables and the what of the project, one way to really increase your contribution to the company and to the success of the project is looking at the value delivery and the how, as Idris says. So, for example, your engineering team, maybe you're doing a product and you have a product and engineering team, instead of chasing them down and making sure that they're delivering things the way they're supposed to, like you used to do, now that your AI assistant's doing that for you, you're spending time thinking about how they operate as a team. How they interact with each other. You're looking for ways to improve the efficiency of their interactions, the way that to improve the efficiencies of the way that they interface with other parts of the organization. Say, for example, that your product and engineering team needs to be communicating well with product marketing as they're thinking about how customers are going to be using the new features that they're working on. You as a value delivery focused project manager are now thinking about those things. How are the different departments planning and working together and collaborating? That's the kind of thing that you do in value delivery.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate again, I think, KPIs and metrics are critical to this, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to measure this because it's important for you to be able to establish baselines and to understand how you're progressing or how you're performing or not, and to be able to help set goals and you're baking those goals into your projects so that it becomes a part of how you are planning and executing and monitoring and controlling against some of those key metrics. And again, I think it's important to understand that this is something that executives may not necessarily proactively approach you with and request, but I guarantee you that they will find value if you as a project manager, you as a PMO leader, you're able to begin capturing this how insight and you're able to go back to your head of operations or your CPO and say, hey, this is how we have performed, and this is the goal that I'm setting for the next iteration or for the next cycle, and then you're keeping them abreast of how you are progressing. You will be viewed in a different way than you have if you're just simply updating them on how you're progressing on the deliverable being complete.
Yeah, at some of the companies I've had, we actually had dedicated teams, though in this case they were within operation, focused around continuous improvement. And the kinds of people that worked there were Six Sigma black belts and also people who had experience with lean or both. And they were looking at the value streams within the different parts of our operations of our company and identifying bottlenecks and other sorts of areas where they could drive efficiencies. And the KPIs were incredibly important on that. So they'd baseline it, they figure out how much it costs to do this particular value stream. And then as they're making improvements, they're measuring to show that ultimately, for example, at the end of the day, the 6-month effort resulted in $5 million of efficiencies in the way that that's being done. So as a project manager professional who no longer is required to focus on the what of what you're doing as much as you used to, you could spend time thinking about how all of these things are going. But as Idris is saying, it's absolutely critical that you get a baseline in your metrics and you're checking along the way so you can prove to senior management and to yourself that these things are working.
Yeah, the team is improving. And I just want to be clear that I'm not necessarily proposing that you have to become a Six Sigma or you have to become like a lean enthusiast. But it's certainly, I certainly think there's a hybrid, or at least there's a lightweight model that can be incorporated for project managers to be able to incorporate some of those notions and concepts into their day-to-day as a way of looking for opportunities and ways of adding more value.
Yeah, fair enough. It really relates a lot to the program or project that you're involved with, or multiple projects, for example, and the teams that you're involved with, as opposed to, say, trying to fix an entire area of operations. But the concepts still hold. Yeah. So, Idris, one of the things that's interesting as well, if you think about this, is we talk about how value delivery management is really a project manager spending time thinking about how to improve the way things are done, right? And traditional project management, now powered by AI, your AI assistant, is thinking a lot about what is being done. We're delivering these things on these dates, that sort of thing. And in one of the other segments we talked about is strategic business outcomes are thinking about why. Why are we doing this investment or this project in the first place? So we've got a why and a how and a what. Yeah. And it's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I think I should create some kind of poster or illustration for project managers. Yes. I think it would be helpful for all of us to see on a wall the why, how, what, maybe in like a triangle or something like that. But yeah, it really is simple. And so as a project manager, if you're trying to understand in the simplest of ways how the introduction of AI as an AI assistant for you can really give you the capacity to think more strategically, I would really sort of simplify it into why, what, and how. And as you said, And then, again, just to reiterate, when you look at the why, it's really understanding the reason why a project is being performed or being initiated to begin with, right? It's understanding why executives are requesting that this project be budgeted and
why are they
supported.
investing in this?
Why are we even spending resources on this? And then the deeper you can understand the why behind that, the more you can add value and define your project in a way that aligns to that. You can track and monitor it in a way that surfaces how the team is progressing against that why or those business goals and outcome. It just provides an immense amount of value to have that sort of that foresight as you are initiating and managing your project. And then when you talk about the what, obviously, I don't think we have to spend a lot of time there. It's what all of us should already understand very well. It's the deliverables, it's the tasks that are required to support actually completing and delivering on the specific project goal, the deliverable.
And those still matter. You still need to deliver.
They don't go away. They don't go away.
They
it's
don't
just
go
that
away.
You're actually adding more work to your plate in the sense that you're taking on both not only the responsibility of tasks and deliverables being satisfied, but now you're also taking on the responsibility of business outcomes, understanding the business outcomes, and taking on the additional responsibility of how you're getting the work done and how you can get the work done more efficiently and more effectively. And the reason why you can take on that additional work is because now you have additional capacity that AI as your partner, as your collaborator, is enabling you to then to really use that spare capacity in new, more impactful ways. So in that sense, you're really elevating your role in a way that you couldn't have done without AI.
It reminds me of a situation at one of the companies.
Ross, by the way, you're always being reminded of things. Like
well,
you
say
brain of yours.
You say stuff, and then I go, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
Like if I were in your brain,
Yep, and even the project name comes to mind.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of a situation where I was working on a project, and I think I was relatively new at the director level, and a VP of engineering came in and he was going to play the executive sponsor role on this project. And he observed me working in the room with the team and driving towards the business strategic outcome that we were looking for. And later he said, "I'm not going to attend these meetings anymore." And I said, "Why not?" He's like, "You've got it." He's like, "You're representing my views. Let me know if there's any problems or anything you need." So,
by the way, that's the biggest compliment I can receive from an executive is I don't need to attend. I don't need to review. I trust you. So
yes, you're right. And that's what you're trying to get to as a project manager. You're trying to get to a point where even your executive sponsor feels superfluous on their own sponsoring project, because you've got it. And that's because you're no longer worried about the what. You will make sure it happens, but it's not your primary focus. Right. You're thinking about the why and the how.
Right. But you're still accountable.
Oh yeah, that doesn't go away.
Or responsible for that what. But yes, you have new things on your plate that can offer even greater value than just focusing on the what.
Well, and if you're spending 80% of your time worrying about chasing down action items, transcribing meeting notes and all those other things, you don't have time to think about this stuff. You're tired at the end of the day, and that's all you can do. So again, in the era of AI, having an assistant take care of a lot of this stuff for you, you still have to make sure that whatever your AI assistant is doing is correct.
Yeah.
Then you now can start to level up and behave. You start thinking as a proxy for your executive about what she or he would be actually worried about. And as they see you acting that way, they're freed up from worrying about your project to worrying about things above them.
Yeah. No, when you talk about, still needing to have a level of oversight, over AI, your AI collaborator, I think it's a really important point, right? Because again, your role doesn't go away. Someone still needs, at the end of the day, if AI is making a recommendation and you authorize it, your neck is on the line ultimately for the decision, right? And so you still have to make sure that you understand the decision, that you're in agreement with what AI is recommending. And so there is a level of oversight and responsibility to make sure that the information it's giving you and the decisions that you are making as a result, that you are still in agreement with. But at least the fundamental work, the work that has to be done to arrive at the insight or the decision that's being done for you, but you still have to make the decision.
I think in the current or more recent world of PPM tools and things like that, your tool might be able to show you a bunch of information about the state of your project. And in the era of AI can then take that information and actually make a recommendation to you. Perhaps the recommendation is that the project needs to be pushed back by a month, right? But what you will always need to do is you need to then be the person that figures out whether or not you agree. You better dig in and really make sure that what AI is suggesting, you're like, yeah, they came to the right conclusion. That is the right. Now it's the how. How do I communicate this to the various teams and to my sponsors and to the various executives and functions and areas that are impacted by this? The AI might be able to tell you that it's going to impact them in these ways, but you need to figure out how to communicate it in the most effective way.
Yeah, and also you still have to build alignment within those teams, right? They may not agree with the conclusions, and so you may still have to sell or to influence the decision making, right? And even to take it a step further, like AI, the suggestions and recommendations that AI gives you may not take into account culture and people and different nuances that you can't just consume data to understand what the best decision is. And so your role as a project manager is to really factor in a lot of these sort of human considerations and to merge that with or to fuse that with the insights that AI is able to provide you and to really come to the right conclusion and the right decision given all of those considerations.
I think an interesting thing that'll happen in the the near few years will be that you may not even want to tell everybody that it was AI who gave you the idea that something like this needs to happen. They may not trust it. It may be that you learn how to trust it, you give it a little bit of oversight and make sure that what it's saying makes sense, and you use it with a little bit of discretion, or at least you don't go around telling everybody, AI told me how to run my project. I could also see executives actually misunderstanding and thinking that means that somehow you aren't needed at all. And again, that goes back to making sure that you're focused again on the why and the how more than the what. Well, and the what, all at the same time.
Yeah. No, and I just want to sort of have a slightly different take on the not sharing AI. If the way that individuals have interacted with ChatGPT over the last several months is any indication.
Oh, fair enough.
People seem to be very comfortable trusting AI.
Too much.
Too much, actually. And so if on the consumer side, that's any indication, I think in the commercial enterprise space, people will become very comfortable with AI very quickly.
That's a really good point, Idris. That's a really good point. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation with senior executives who say, I want to make data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
And you're right. It may be that it's the exact opposite of what I was saying before, which is instead, if AI based this decision on
my data,
the data, and they believe that the data that you're using is sound,
yeah,
they may actually trust that more than you using your gut.
Yeah, or just maybe just a brief level of healthy skepticism that may within a few weeks or maybe even days even, they may go from skeptical or cautious to all in.
You're right. People will convert. It's similar with ChatGPT and other generative AI tools where all of us, you know how it is the first time that you ever used it, right? All of us, you're kind of like, well, I don't know how this is going to work. And you say,
3 days later.
Exactly. Every project plan, So now, I am sure all of you have noticed, everything that comes back is not quite production ready for you to share with your bosses. It still requires, the human touch.
But that's why you'll still have a job, right?
Exactly.
That is your value add, is playing that oversight role, being able to help massage what your assistant is offering you to put it into a format and to an asset that is consumable and of use to your company.
You understand like how to communicate messages in the right way. You understand the culture of your company, of the countries you're dealing with. You're right. That part won't go away. But as we said, if all the stuff that you do is what your assistant does, and now you're just free to go home at 2 p.m, that might not work as well.
Yeah. So I think just to sort of to close out the discussion, I think when it comes to value delivery management, it's important to really understand that you need to stay locked in on the how, right?
Yeah.
And really understand that with this additional capacity, it provides an immense opportunity for you as a project manager to really, to dive deep into that how as a way of offering value. So I can't imagine a project manager in the era of AI struggling to understand how they can add value, right? There's so many.
They might not be willing to.
Well, that's different. Yeah, that's different. But there's so many
but
great
not
opportunities
knowing,
to be able to contribute and make a higher impact. And I would just propose that whatever opportunity you consider, ensure that it's in alignment as closely as possible with business goals and business needs strategically. And if you do that, you can't go wrong. Whether you're focused on the how, or you're focused on the why, or a bit of both. As long as you're aligned to what matters most to the business, you'll be fine.
So in the context of a project manager now having an AI project assistant, one of the other things that is going to really open up here is the ability to, as I say, get Agile right. We've found for quite a while now that the promise of Agile development. I remember when I first heard about it. It's kind of like, oh, this makes so much sense. The flexibility and all the other good things that come with it, right? But in practice, I've never really seen it work in the purest sense of how it was originally defined. And we think that AI is going to open up that possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you, the number of times that my team was asked, to manage, a Scrum or to manage some initiative, and not being able to offer, a predictable sort of schedule. Based on the product.
The executives don't like that very much.
Yeah, that doesn't really work very well. And so I think very early on with the introduction of Agile, it was very clear to me that my teams needed to be able to sort of offer some hybrid approach where they could still sort of plan at a high level conceptually, that sort of the longer arc, if you will, in a waterfall manner, while still allowing the teams to function on a day-to-day iterative basis in an Agile manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the same thing that happened in my companies as well, we converted the engineering and product teams over to Scrum. And I remember there was a lot of resistance on that from even some of the engineering folks. You'd think that there would be more embracing of that, but there was some at the time some serious skepticism that this Silicon Valley big tech concept was coming into the next level of companies. And so there's this sense of, okay, now we're Agile. But the reality is we also the same thing within the PMO. And we figured out that the outside of the product and engineering teams, everyone else really expected waterfall.
Because as PMO, we're in the middle, right?
Exactly,
so
we're in the middle.
So you have engineers on one side that really have begun to love agility and the freedom and the flexibility it gives them, because it allows them to be more adaptive to a fast changing environment and competitive space.
The 2 or 3 week sprints, they love those.
They love being able to not think further ahead than that, which I completely understand.
Yeah.
But then on the other end, as project managers, we have business leaders, we have executive sponsors, you have C-level leaders that really are expecting a certain amount of output, velocity output. They're expecting a certain amount of deliverables to actually be released, product features, et cetera, to be released. And we're having to sort of answer along with maybe the engineering leadership as well, as to why teams aren't delivering enough or when they can expect certain things to happen. So sales and marketing can have clarity on when they can set customer expectations on some feature set, et cetera. And so, again, we're in the middle of these two audiences that have very different interests.
Nobody was happy.
Nobody was happy. And we're having to sort of bridge the gap here. We're trying to negotiate with engineering leadership to at least give us enough clarity and commitment.
How many sprints ahead do you think this might be, right?
And can you commit to it? And can you at least
And they're like, well,
confidence levels and et cetera. And so,
exactly.
So I think we were really on the front line of having to force the conversation, or at least to begin thinking about these hybrid sort of designs that have become pretty ubiquitous now, I believe, in a lot of companies in PMO, in having to embrace a hybrid approach to being able to move forward and deliver.
Right. But the hard part with the hybrid approach is, as the project manager, you're trying to juggle both sides. The structured, predictable side and the flexible, adaptive side. And the way that you take all this information together is in my case, our team, we were using things like Excel and stuff to try and try and pull, and then you're saying a date to someone and you're like, please be right.
It's an interesting point. So if you look at all of the leading agile tools that are out there today, and like in my day, Rally and version 1 were, I think, some of the leaders in the industry early on. But now you have like Asana, and you have Monday, and you have the Jira suite, and so you have a lot of options. But if you look at that, these tools are really still set up as squarely agile tools. So when you're scoring and your story points and how you're measuring sort of commitments, it's still within the agile framework. And so this notion of hybrid sort of waterfall-esque ways of being able to track and monitor still really haven't been built fully into a lot of these tools. And so as project managers, you're still left to having your own sort of hybrid, sort of hodgepodge way of taking the information that you're getting from your agile tools, translating it into a Gantt chart of some sort,
right?
That is not agile,
and you don't show that to engineering because they don't want to see that.
Yeah, that's your
exactly.
sort of, your tool and your data, and you're trying to translate that to executives and sponsors and other things that they can understand. So you're really sort of creating this mishmash of using a mismatch of tools and data to try and ultimately to appease all of these different audiences. And I think that leads us to like AI and the opportunity that AI actually provides. Right?
I think so. Yeah. I don't know about you, Idris, but you create something like that Gantt chart, and then an executive sees it. It's done. Like now that's the commitment, right?
Yeah.
They saw it.
Yeah.
It is now the date, and now suddenly you find this date is like everywhere.
No, you show it, you own it.
Exactly. And what sucks is that you, as the PMO leader or the project manager, are now just, like I said, sort of hoping that it all works out.
The worst thing is to be asked to share a deck that contains timelines that are still in draft form via email. Like, Idris, can you send me that deck that you showed over screen share over Zoom or
it gets forwarded
and
to everyone.
Then it gets forwarded and it becomes like, wait, hold. It's too late then. So, but
it's like, great, it's coming out in November.
Yeah, Idris is committed. He showed it in a slide.
Oh my. Yeah, so like you were teeing up, I think is the interesting thing is we believe that with AI, there's an opportunity here now to finally get hybrid right.
Yeah.
The true promise of Agile with the need for a certain amount of predictability and structure for other parts of the organization who don't operate in an Agile manner.
Yeah. I think what AI will be able to do sooner than later is to consume all of this different data related to Agile and really structure it in a way that it can also understand the constraints or the needs of the executives and really begin to frame naturally how to organize all of these sort of data sources and to ultimately to provide an optimized understanding of what's possible, what's likely, without you as a project manager having to really think a lot about that. And so it will naturally be able to give you data that that is organized in a in a Gantt chart, or just gives you data that's structured in a way that can give you more predictability without necessarily having to crunch the numbers yourself and drop it into an Excel sheet and do all of these sort of creative ways to be able to try and identify and anticipate what's possible. And then in addition to that is going to be able to assess the risk as well, and to be able to offer you greater visibility more proactively with your Scrum teams, your Agile teams, in terms of risks that are possible, in ways that would be much more difficult for you to do if you were just trying to read your, some of these reports and try and assess, what the likely outcome is or how teams are actually tracking. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And if what AI is incredibly good at, as we all know, is data, right?
Yeah.
And
you have lots of it.
And there's a lot of data coming out, and especially in and even in tools like, say, Asana or Monday, you could take your Agile data and you could try and figure out what your team's velocity of, or maybe if you're doing safe, the multiple Scrum teams, or how their velocities are going. But at a certain point, it gets a bit overwhelming, right? Because you're trying to figure out, you're looking at the backlog, you're trying to figure out the velocities, you're trying to figure out how they interact with each other, the various Agile teams, and where that all leads towards the delivery of a significant feature or release of a product. And then there's the ones that aren't even in that tool. Like I said, like product marketing or sales enablement or any of those other things, or customer interactions, all those types of stuff, gets to a point where it's just overwhelming. And that's what AI is going to really make a difference at here, is that AI will be able to consume all of these things, the people who are working in Agile, the people who aren't working in Agile, the different functions, the constraints, and really be able to bring it together so that essentially that the different parts of the organization get to work in their most efficient manner.
Yes.
And it's okay that they're all different, or that they could be different, and it still can work together.
Yeah. AI becomes the glue that allows all of these teams to operate with the project methodology of their choice, and it really sort of links them all together in a way that you, as a project manager, can maintain visibility and insight into all of the things that matter most to performing your job, which is, can we deliver as committed or as expected? What are the risks that need to be proactively dealt with? And what is the how, and how are we performing, and how can we, against baselines, and how can we perform even more efficiently and more effectively, increase velocity, and all of those things that's necessary.
Absolutely. It makes something that was actually impossible to get your arms around relatively easy to get your arms around, frees you up to focus again on how the team's operating, why are we delivering this, and how are we doing on our metrics and KPIs towards the business outcome that this entire project is here for in the first place. And figuring out how to make tweaks and changes and adjustments along the way, driving through the risks. That's what your job's going to be.